Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chris. It's your boy Chris. It's another episode of Financipation. This channel is all about making money. It's all about saving money. It's all about building generational wealth. And it's all about financially emancipating yourself from generational poverty. For this video, everybody, I want you guys to sit back, grab a pen and a pad, because you are going to learn some extremely important things in this video. I guarantee you, this video is going to turn some of you into millionaires. Full disclosure exactly of who I am if you're not familiar with this channel. I study engineering at North Carolina A&T State University. Shout out to my Aggies. I've been a practicing mechanical engineer for roughly 20 years. I went to school at night and got my MBA or whatever in grad school from Drexel University. So shout out to my Dragons up in Philly. And for this particular video, guys, we're going to talk about stock market investing, and particularly when it comes to index fund investing. And a lot of times in my previous videos, I talk about the three pillars when it comes to the poor and the middle class in regards to building wealth, with those pillars being the 401k, the Roth IRA, and the HSA account. I would consider index fund investing to be kind of the fourth pillar, if you want to call it that, because there are so many different financial benefits that come with index fund investing. And if you're not familiar with the stock market, this is pretty much how you play the stock market. Okay, so like I said, sit back and enjoy, because you're about to learn some things that could easily turn you into a millionaire. So first and foremost, let's start at the beginning. What is an index fund? So there are two types of index funds we're going to talk about for this particular video. One is a regular traditional index fund, and the other is an actively managed mutual fund. So what is an index fund? An index fund is essentially nothing more than a group of stock or bonds that matches the performance of an index fund or stock. The S&P 500, for instance, matches the performance of the top 500 stocks on the stock market. Those can be Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Tesla, Pandora, etc. And the total stock market index fund, it's basically a portfolio that you own that manages all the particular stocks in the stock market. There are over 3,000 plus stocks or whatever in the currently in the U.S. stock market, and the total stock market index fund, as its name implies, pretty much combines and balances all of them. Whereas the S&P manages the top 500. S&P 500 manages the top 500. So mutual funds versus index funds. When I first got into investing, I first got into grad school and everything, I assumed, like most people, that mutual funds and index funds are basically one and the same, when in actuality, there are some differences. They are not the same. Full disclosure, all index funds are mutual funds, but not all mutual funds are index funds. So an actively managed mutual fund is essentially a fund that is designed to beat the stock market. So there's two types of mutual funds we're going to focus on. One are the typical index funds, and two are the actively managed mutual funds. So the typical index fund is designed to match the stock market. The stock market on average returns on the return on investment is 7%. And actively managed mutual funds are funds that are ran by extremely intelligent, typically Ivy League educated mutual fund manager that is paid to beat the stock market. So because mutual fund managers are ran by individuals who basically are extremely intelligent and they're paid to beat the stock market, they charge, typically speaking, very exorbitantly high fees. And this individual basically charges fees under the premise that if you invest with them, they're going to make you more money than if you invest in a regular vanilla flavored index fund or whatever that just matches the stock market. What's interesting, however, though, is that 90% of the time over a 15-year period, the typical pros who manage these index funds, they don't beat the stock market and they don't beat index funds. In other words, if you invest in a mutual fund that's ran by an actively managed mutual fund manager, there is a very good possibility, literally 90% of the time over a 15-year period, they're going to cost you money, and they are not going to basically beat the regular index fund that you can manage on your own, that you basically can buy into and manage on your own. In fact, it's to the point where most mutual fund managers or whatever, literally, like I said, 90% of the time can't beat an index fund. And on top of it, they charge you fees. So actively managed mutual funds, if you invest in one of those, it's typically going to cost you money over the long haul than if you invest in just a regular index fund. So my personal advice, and it's going to piss off a lot of my buddies who I study with and a lot of friends who I have who are actually investment managers, who are mutual fund managers. My personal advice is don't go with an actively managed mutual fund. My personal advice is to basically invest with a standard index fund that you can buy through Fidelity, you can buy through Charles Schwab, you can buy through Guggenheim, or you can buy through Vanguard. My personal advice is don't mess around with the actively managed mutual funds. They cost you more money over the long haul. The taxes are a little bit higher. And on top of it, they come with fees, and those fees very rarely beat the index funds you can pretty much buy on your own. Also, let's talk a little bit about the history of index funds, so that way I can kind of educate you on where they started and what they're about. So in 1965, a gentleman named Jack Bogle created the index fund. And Jack Bugle, if you're familiar with who he is, he was the guy who created Vanguard, an extremely intelligent man. And prior to Jack creating this index fund, mutual funds, the way their claim to fame was, if you invest in a mutual fund, it's going to beat the stock market. And i.e., if you beat the stock market, you're always going to make more money. Jack came up with the very revolutionary idea that instead of me trying to beat the stock market, let me just match it. Because if I match the stock market, on average, my investors are going to get basically a 7% return on their money. When Jack Bugle came up with this concept, he literally got death threats, because what he essentially did was he allowed I don't want to say unintelligent, but he allowed the average everyday Joe to basically invest into the stock market and invest in the mutual funds and get significant money. And more importantly, a lot of mutual fund managers were pissed because he basically took money out of their pockets, because instead of you having to go to a mutual fund guy who you had to pay exorbitant fees to, you could go basically invest on your own, get your own index funds, and literally never have to deal with these people. So Jack Bugle got a lot of flack for that. It's actually still to this day, people who say that they don't invest with mutual fund managers, they only invest with index funds, including yours truly, people don't like that. It kind of ticks them off, because instead of me having to pay an individual exorbitant fees to basically manage my portfolio, I do it myself, and the stock market does it for itself. And as I said, 90% of the time, some of the smartest Ivy League educated, Wharton School of Business educated, some of the smartest investment bankers, some of the best of the best, the pros who basically try to beat the stock market over 15% over a 15-year period, don't beat the stock market. So as a result, honestly, as I said earlier, my advice is don't go to actively managed mutual funds. It doesn't work. Instead, go to your own index funds. So to get back to Mr. Bugle, this literally revolutionized the industry, because as I said earlier, it easily allowed the average Joes basically to invest, and in essence, it actually eliminated the need for most mutual fund managers. So let's keep it moving. Things to know about index funds. Diversification is always good with investing. I don't care whatever you're investing in. It's always good basically kind of spread it around or whatever. And index funds are great because if you invest in them, you're essentially investing in the top 500 to the top 3,000 plus stocks that are available on the stock market. The S&P 500, you're investing in the top 500 stocks. If you're doing a typical index fund, typical total stock market index fund that's ran by Vanguard, ran by Charles Schwab, ran by Fidelity, you're investing in literally thousands of index funds. I'm sorry, thousands of stocks or whatever. So if you're broke like I was when I first started investing in index funds, and when I first started investing in the stock market, if you're broke, index funds are a great place to start because they almost guarantee that you make money. Actually, they do guarantee that you make money over a 15-year period. They've literally never lost money. And on top of that, this is throughout the 2008 Great Recession that we had, and up until present day with the inflation rates that we're having. So essentially, if you're broke, go with the growth stock mutual fund. In fact, what I always tell people is this: if you only have $50 a month that you can invest into the stock market, you can only buy one stock. You typically can't buy one stock of Tesla for $50. It's you can't buy one stock of Microsoft for $50, typically speaking. But with a mutual fund or with a total stock market index fund, you can take that $50 and still invest into the stock market. So no matter how broke you are, like I was years ago when I first started investing into index funds or whatever, no matter how broke you are, you can always invest in an index fund, particularly if you go through Fidelity and a few other companies. So if you're new to investing, my advice is do not, once again, I'm gonna say this crystal clear. If you are new to investing, do not buy individual stocks. Do not buy an individual stock in Apple. Do not buy an individual stock in Microsoft or Google or Facebook. I know this is somewhat controversial because typically speaking, when I get these WhatsApp groups or I see these quote unquote investment gurus on Facebook or whatever, or the bikini Instagram models talking about their investment bankers or whatever, they can help you stack your paper. They always say it's a good idea to invest, buy individual stocks in such and such and such and such, and they're going to teach you the secrets to success. My personal advice is to avoid all those people and instead take that $50 or $100 or $25 or whatever it is that you can invest, and instead invest it directly into a good index fund. That's my personal advice. Okay, keep it moving. Also, people, go back to the mutual fund thing in regards to mutual fund managers. Don't believe the hype. Once again, I have a good amount of people I know who are mutual fund managers, and they will sell you the bells and whistles. They'll tell you, this is my investment, this is what I make, this is what I do for my clients, and that's all well and good. There are people who legit are that top 10%. They're the top 10% that can beat the stock market. But for the other 90% people, they're selling you wolf tickets. They're basically saying they're going to beat the stock market. And once again, over a 15-year period, 90% of professional mutual fund managers cannot beat the stock market. So my personal advice is invest in an index fund. Okay. Keep it moving. Which index funds should you invest in? Once again, this is kind of completely up to you. I know the ones that me and my family and my wife and I invest into, but it kind of depends on you or yourself or whatever. If you want to go the more aggressive route, S&P 500. Why? Because you can make a little bit more money, because instead of investing in all the stocks in the total stock market, you can only invest in the top 500. So if you're more of if you're more of the aggressive type, you can go that route. If you want to go kind of more the route that I went, I instead invested into a good Fidelity account. So FSKAX, that's the total stock market index fund that I use and that my family uses. But once again, people, this is pretty much up to me. That's based off of my own personal financial journey, and it's what I choose to go with. But when it comes to what index funds you should invest in, like I said, Charles Schwab has a very good one. Vanguard has a very good one. Bank of America has some. Wells Fargo has their own. So do your own research, pretty much, people, and go from there. In regards to doing your own research, I'm also going to tell you, take a look at the fees and take a look at the minimums that are to start. One reason why I did not go with Vanguard's total stock market index fund, which is a very good one, it's called the VSKAX, is because it costs $3,000 to start it up. And at the time when I first was getting index funds, I ain't have $3,000 basically just dropped. It's simple as that. I just didn't. For Fidelity and Charles Schwab, I'm sorry, it was $0. So as a result, I went with Fidelity. But always be aware, people, of the fees and the expense ratios when it comes to index funds. So for instance, Guggenheim has a total stock market index fund that has an expense ratio of 1.5%. Now, an expense ratio of 1.5% sounds very small if you don't really know what you're doing, because the number 1.5%, obviously, that's not a very high number or whatever. That means out of every $100, they're going to take literally less than $2. They're going to take less than $2 until, however, you consider it's like this. The Fidelity's total stock market index fund that I have, it has, at the time I'm recording this, has an expense ratio of 0.15%. Now Guggenheim has 1.5%. My Fidelity total stock market index fund has an expense ratio of 0.15%. At the time I'm recording this, Charles Schwab's has an expense ratio of 0.02%. So Guggenheim's is literally 100 times, the expense ratio is literally 100 times higher than Charles Schwab's and Fidelity's or whatever. And you get literally, for lack of a better word, the exact same stocks that you're investing into. So once again, people, do your own research as far as what you want to do. Some are more heavy toward bonds because people are getting closer to retirement. Some are more aggressive because people have more time to go, so they're more into stocks. So basically, do your own research, people, and figure out which index funds you want to go with, okay? So another thing, keep it moving. Another benefit of index funds are the dividends. So many companies offer to pay dividends every quarter, basically based to their shareholders, based off of the people who are investing into their companies. So in other words, dividends are profits that companies pay to you because you own the shares. So in other words, people, by investing in the total stock market index fund, you basically are allowing yourself to get paid dividends every quarter. Sometimes it's a little bit of money, sometimes it's a lot of money. But if you invest into the total stock market index fund, you are literally going to be paid dividends based off of some companies. And as I said earlier, these dividends get paid out on a quarterly basis. Next, there are tax benefits that come with getting an index fund versus an actively managed mutual fund. So index funds are slightly more tax efficient than actively managed mutual funds, because an actively managed mutual fund, given the fact that your fund manager is jumping in and out of the stock market, buying and selling, you're going to get hit with a lot more capital gains taxes, and as a result, you're going to get taxed more if you're basically with a good mutual fund manager. However, if you go with an index fund, however, they don't buy or sell nearly as often. So as a result, you don't incur nearly as many capital gains taxes. So just kind of one thing to kind of look into. If you go with the mutual fund manager route, you're going to get taxed a lot more. If you go the index fund, total stock market index fund route, you're not going to get taxed as much. Next, capitalization is weighted a little differently. So when you invest in an index fund, you get the companies that make up the largest percentage of the stock market, the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Teslas or whatever, NASA's, the companies like that. You're investing more of your money into the bigger companies because they're they're larger percentage of how it affects the U.S. economy. So as a result, you're investing more into the winners. And because you're investing also in this minuscule, smaller companies or whatever, that kind of balances out your losses. So your gains are so it balances out your wins and your losses. So as a result, your capitalization gets weighted to the point where it's generally speaking, it's very beneficial for you as a consumer. Additionally, you also own a larger percentage of the larger, more valuable companies. Why? Because they make up a much larger percentage of the U.S. economy. So when you invest in index funds, you invest more of your money in the larger, more successful companies that make up the stock market. And over time, investing in the Googles, the Amazons, the Teslas, the Facebooks, this helps your bottom line significantly. So keep it moving. How do you set up an account? If all these benefits that I'm telling you about an index fund, how do you set up an account with them? It's very simple. You can go to Vanguard.com. You can go to CharlesSchwab.com. You can go to Fidelity.com. Bank of America has some. Merrill Lynch has some. Literally, you can either go to these websites and set it up yourself, or you can give them a call. Within 30 to 45 minutes, they can basically walk you through how to do it. And I personally, like I said, when I first started investing in my index funds, I was a broke college student. So as a result, investing into them, I had no money. So as a result, I couldn't go the Vanguard route, because Vanguard at the time that I was trying to invest, I think it was $2,000. Now I know it's $3,000. Whatever the amount was, I didn't have the amount to put that into Vanguard to get it started. Having said that, Vanguard has a very good total stock market index fund. The ticker symbol is VSKX. Charles Schwab also has an extremely good total stock market index fund. Their ticker is SWTSX. Fidelity, they have an extremely good total stock market index fund as well. Their ticker symbol is FSKX. And unlike an actively managed mutual fund that you have to pay exorbitant fees to somebody, with these, it's all passive. So as a result, the expense ratios for all of them are very small. For Fidelity right now, it's 0.15%. For Charles Schwab right now, it's 0.02%. And for Vanguard, I believe it's 0.03%. So the expense ratios for all three of these are very small. You're guaranteed to make at least a 7% interest on money, because historically speaking, the stock market gives you 7% in return. And then on top of that, people, you don't have to worry about your taxes or whatever from capital gains. Your taxes are lower than it would be for an actively managed mutual fund. And on top of that, you also don't have to pay the fees. So I talk about the different things in regards to how people can go about building generational wealth. I talk about 401ks. I talk about Roth IRAs. I talk about HSAs. I consider those the three pillars of building generational wealth, because those are the pillars that are available to the poor and the middle class. The total stock market index fund is another one that I kind of somewhat consider the fourth pillar, because anyone from any walk of life pretty much can invest into it. If you are under 18, you can invest into the total stock market index fund by having one of your parents or having a legal guardian buy into it for you. If you are 18 years old, you can open your own total stock market index fund. And the thing I love about it is that you don't have to waste time trying to time the market or whatever. You don't have to try to waste money or time or energy basically trying to be a day trader and jump in and out of the stock market. You can literally invest your money into a total stock market index fund, put a certain percentage every pay period into it, and over the course of your lifetime, make millions of dollars. And it's one of those things where literally it's fire and forget. You put it in there and you are good to go. So unlike a 401k or a Roth IRA, there are no annual contributions. For a 401k, you can only put $6,000. You can only put $20,000 and $500 into it. For a Roth IRA, you can only put $6,000 into it. And if you're under 49, if you're over 50, you can put $7,000 into it. For a total stock market index and for index funds, you can literally put up to there is no contribution limit. And on top of that, for all my parents that are listening, it's a lot easier to some extent to open up an index fund or a mutual fund for your son or daughter than it is open a Roth IRA, because with Roth IRAs and 401ks, there are employment stipulations that come with it. So honestly, people, this is one of those kind of things that, like I said, if you invest in it the right way, you can make some serious generational wealth by investing into an index fund. It's one of those kind of things where it's like Einstein said about the power of compound interest, it being one of the strongest forces in the universe. With index funds, you can make some serious money because you can start putting money into them as soon as your son or your daughter is born. My son, I just had a son, he just was born. I opened up an index fund for him, and that money is just going to stack and stack and stack in addition to the other accounts that I opened up for him. And it's one of those things where people in our community who share my reflection, we just don't talk about index funds at the barbershops. We don't talk about them at the barbecues. We don't talk about them at the block parties. We don't talk about them on the basketball courts. This is one of those kind of things that capitalism allows you to do, people, that our community does not talk about, and that in general, America does not talk about enough. No one knows about it. They don't teach this kind of stuff in school, unfortunately. And with me, I went to college and basically spent over $100,000 to get my MBA. So I learned this stuff. And as a result, I'm trying to give it to you guys for free. So with that, everybody, please like, please comment, please subscribe. Take it easy, everybody. It's your boy, Chris. I'm out. Peace.